The night Ada was thrown out of her own house, she was still bleeding. Not from a fight. Not from a fall. From giving birth. Her husband stood in the doorway of the room where she had just spent 6 hours screaming his name, begging God, tearing the bedsheet with her bare hands, and he looked at the child in her arms like it was a mistake. "Pack your things," he said. "You and that girl." That was it. No rage. No shouting. Just those 5 words, cold and flat, like he was talking about furniture he no longer wanted. Ada looked at him. Then she looked at her daughter, tiny, wrinkled, eyes still closed, mouth making small shapes like she was trying to speak already. And something inside Ada locked shut forever. That was the night the story began. But before we get there, you need to understand what brought them to that moment. Because this is not just a story about a man who threw away his wife. This is a story about what happened to the daughter he threw away with her. This is the story of Rose. Ada had come into Peter's house 8 years before that night, and she had come in full of light. She was 22 years old, slim, quiet, the kind of woman people called gentle because she never raised her voice even when she had every reason to. Peter was 30. He worked at a logistics company in Lagos, drove a fairly decent car, had a 2-bedroom flat in Surulere that he was proud of. He was not rich, but he was solid. And at 22, solid felt like enough. Their first year was warm. He brought her food when she worked late. She ironed his clothes before he asked. They argued sometimes, made up before morning. Neighbors called them sweet. But by the second year, the question began. It started small. His mother called one Sunday and spent 40 minutes asking Ada about her health, her diet, whether she had seen a doctor. Ada sat in the kitchen after the call and stared at the wall. She knew what the questions were really about. By the 3rd year, it was no longer hidden. "Your mates are carrying children on their backs," Peter said one evening, not looking up from his phone. "What is happening with you?" Ada opened her mouth, closed it. What could she say? She had been trying. She had cried in bathrooms. She had prayed until her knees ached. She had sat in 3 different hospital waiting rooms surrounded by women who all carried the same silent shame. But Peter did not want to hear that. As the years passed without a child, Peter changed. Slowly, the way erosion works, you don't notice until one day you look and the ground has moved. He stopped eating her food first. Then he stopped coming home before midnight. Then he brought a friend named Chike home one evening, loud, big-shouldered, and while they drank beer in the sitting room, Chike looked at Ada and laughed. "Peter, you sure say the problem is not from your own side?" Peter did not defend her. He just laughed too. Ada walked into the bedroom and sat on the bed for a long time. That was the night the part of her that still believed things could go back to how they were, died quietly. She found out she was pregnant in her 6th year of marriage. She was in a pharmacy in Oshodi, shaking so badly the pharmacist asked if she was okay. She drove home, locked herself in the bathroom, sat on the floor with the test in her hand for 27 minutes. Positive. She laughed. She covered her mouth. She laughed again. Tears poured down her face, and she didn't wipe them. She stayed on that floor and let joy, the purest joy she had felt in years, wash over her like water. That evening she cooked the best meal she had made in a long time. Jollof rice, fried plantain, peppered chicken. She set the table. She waited for Peter. When he came in, she stood up. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice shaking. Peter froze. Then slowly, she watched something shift in his eyes. Pride. Real, unguarded pride. He crossed the room in 3 steps and held her face. "My house will not remain empty," he said. Ada held those words like a lifeline. She did not know that joy can be a trap when it only belongs to one person. The pregnancy was hard. She vomited every morning. She was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. But Peter paid the bills without complaint, and for those 9 months, something in the house softened. He checked on her. He bought things without being asked. Ada thought they had crossed something. She thought the baby was going to save them. She went into labor on a Thursday night. 6 hours. She screamed until her voice gave out. She gripped nurses' hands. At one point, she genuinely believed her body was going to split in two. Then a cry cut through the room like a knife. The midwife placed the baby on Ada's chest. Ada looked down. Small. Fists clenched like she had already decided to fight. Ada pressed her lips to the baby's head. You're here. You're here. Outside, Peter waited. A nurse told him it was a girl. When he came into the room, the pride was gone. In its place was something flat and hard like a door closing. He looked at the baby once. Just once. We need to talk, he said. He brought the new woman in before Ada was even discharged. Her name was Grace. Younger. She walked into the flat 2 days after the delivery with a bag full of her things and a face that carried no apology. She didn't look at Ada directly. She looked at everything around Ada, as if Ada was already a ghost. Peter stood in the sitting room and said the words Ada would never forget. You can take the back room. You and the baby. Until you find somewhere to go. Ada stood in the doorway, still sore, still weak, holding her newborn daughter. She looked at this man she had given 8 years to. She looked at this woman standing in her kitchen, and for the first time in her married life, Ada did not look down. What did you just say to me? She asked quietly. Peter's jaw tightened. You heard me. Ada looked at the baby in her arms. Asleep. Completely calm. Her little mouth slightly open. No idea what was happening. Ada straightened her back. Her name is Rose, she said. Just that. And she walked past him into the corridor. She stayed 2 more weeks. Not because she had nowhere to go, she didn't, but because she refused to run. She cooked her own meals, fed her baby, washed her own clothes. Every morning Grace walked through the flat like she owned it, and Ada watched from the corner of her eye and said nothing. But she was not invisible. She made sure of that. She called her younger brother Samuel in Ikorodu, told him everything. Samuel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Sister, come. Just come. The night before Ada left, she packed slowly. She took her clothes, Rose's things, the small wooden cross her mother had given her on her wedding day. She took nothing that was Peter's. Not one cup, not one towel. In the morning she walked through the flat one last time. Grace was sleeping. Peter was in the sitting room, phone in hand, not looking at her. Ada stopped at the door. She did not turn around. She did not say goodbye. She walked out into the early Lagos morning. Baby strapped to her chest, bag on her shoulder. She stood on the street and felt the air hit her face. 30 years old. No job. No money except what Samuel had sent. No home. She had a daughter. She started walking. Samuel's house in Ikorodu was small. 1 room, a parlor, a kitchen that was more of a corner. He lived there with his wife Beezy and their 2 loud young sons. Ada moved into the parlor. She slept on a mattress on the floor with Rose beside her. She did not complain. She woke before anyone else, cleaned, and spent the days looking for work. Rose was 3 months old. Ada had nothing beyond a secondary school certificate and a secretarial diploma. 8 years out of the job market. She knocked on doors. She walked into shops. Most of the time, they didn't need anyone. At night, she lay on that mattress and listened to Rose breathe. She counted her daughter's small, perfect breaths. And inside the silence, she built a promise, not dramatic, not loud. Just a wall, brick by brick. This child will not suffer the way I suffered, whatever I have to do. It was Beezy's cousin Funk who changed everything, and Funk didn't even know it. Funk ran a tailoring shop in Acacia. She came to visit one Sunday afternoon and saw Ada sitting in the corner, Rose asleep on her lap, hemming a dress by hand to pass the time. Funk watched for a moment. You sew? A little, Ada replied. Little is enough. I need someone at the shop 3 days a week. The pay won't be much to start. Ada looked up. I'll take it. That was how it started.
3 days a week.
Then 4. Then every day. Her fingers, already careful from years of folding shirts Peter never thanked her for, turned out to be built for this. She learned to cut fabric. She learned the machine. She learned to speak to customers like they mattered. Funk raised her pay after 2 months. After 6 months, she gave Ada her own corner of the shop. Rose, through all of this, grew. Rose grew like a plant that had been denied water and then suddenly found a deep underground stream. She was not quiet. From the moment she started talking, she talked about everything. She asked questions that made Ada laugh out loud and then stop and think. Mama, why do some people have 1 shoe and other people have 10? Mama, does God sleep? Mama, why does that man shout at his wife like that? Doesn't she feel sad inside? Ada held her daughter's face in both hands. Rose looked back, completely unafraid. Yes, Ada finally said. She feels very sad inside. Then why does she stay? Some women don't know they can leave.
Rose thought about that.
We left, she said simply. Yes, Ada whispered. We did. When Rose was 7, Ada rented her own room in a UCHE.
Small.
The ceiling leaked when it rained, but the key was Ada's. She hung a curtain on the window, bought a second-hand fan, put Rose's drawings on the wall with tape. Rose stood in the middle of the room on the first day and spun around slowly, arms out wide. It's ours, she said. It is, Ada agreed. Rose was 9 the first time she asked about her father. They were eating dinner. Spaghetti and egg stew, Rose's favorite. Laughing about something. Then suddenly Rose put down her fork.
Mama.
Do I have a father? The laughter stopped. Ada set her own fork down carefully. You do, she said. Where is he? He chose not to be with us. Did he know about me? Yes. Does he know where we live?
No.
Rose picked her fork back up. She ate 3 more bites. Then she put it down again. Okay, she said. Just okay. No tears. No big reaction. She was 9 years old, and she swallowed it whole and went back to eating. That night Ada lay awake and cried quietly into her pillow, not for herself, but because her daughter had already learned at 9 to swallow things that should have broken her. And Ada didn't know if that was strength or a wound wearing the mask of strength. She didn't know which one scared her more. Rose was 17 when the world began to notice her. She didn't go looking for it. She just was who she was, fully, loudly, without apology, and eventually the world had no choice but to turn its head. It started in school. Rose attended a government secondary school in a UCHE. Old building. Broken windows in some classrooms. A library that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Teachers who were mostly tired and underpaid. For most students, it was somewhere to pass time until WAC. But Rose treated it like it was the most important building in the world. She read everything she could find. She borrowed books from teachers. She went to the cyber cafe 2 streets away and paid 30 naira per hour to read articles she couldn't afford to print. She stayed after school and asked questions that made some teachers uncomfortable and others genuinely excited. Her English teacher, Mr. Okafor, wiry, 50s, 22 years in the classroom, called Ada in at the end of Rose's first year. Ada sat across from him in the small staff room, nervous. Mrs. Ada, he said, leaning forward. Your daughter is not normal. Ada's stomach clenched. I mean that well, he added quickly. I have had good students. Hardworking students. But Rose doesn't just answer questions. She questions the questions. He paused. I want to enter her for the national essay competition. The winner gets noticed by the right people. Noticed by who? Ada asked. By the right people. Rose wrote the essay in 4 days. The topic: what does it mean to belong? She sat at their small table each evening while Ada sewed nearby. She wrote, crossed out, wrote again. She did not ask for help. She did not show Ada drafts. On the 4th evening, she handed Ada 3 pages of handwritten work. Ada read it slowly. The essay was about a woman who spent her entire life making a home in a house that was never truly hers. About pouring everything into a place, sweeping its floors, cooking its food, carrying its name, and then being put outside its walls like something that had expired. About what happens to a child born into that rejection. How that child learns to build home from inside herself, because no walls are reliable. It was not angry. It was not bitter. It was honest in the way only someone who has lived something can be. Ada put the pages down. She looked at her daughter. Rose was watching her carefully. It's too honest, Ada said quietly. I know. People will know it's about us. I know that too. Ada looked at the pages again.
Submit it, she said.
Rose won at state level. Then she was pushed forward to nationals, which Ada didn't even know existed until Mr. Okafor called in a panic of excitement at 7 on a Saturday morning. She won that too. A ceremony in Abuja. Ada borrowed money from Funk to buy Rose a dress. Rose wore it with flat shoes, her hair in a neat bun, and stood on a stage in front of 200 people. When she stepped off, a woman was waiting. Dr. Kayamika Ease. Mid-40s. Well-dressed. Reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She ran a nonprofit that gave scholarships to promising young women from low-income backgrounds. She had read the essay. I want to talk to your mother, she said to Rose. Rose looked at her steadily. You can talk to me. Dr. Ease paused. Then she smiled. You're right. I can. The scholarship covered 4 years of university. When Ada heard the number, she sat down and did not speak for 2 full minutes. Dr. Ease waited across from her, patient and still. Why? Ada finally asked. Because I read her essay, and because I know where essays like that come from. Something in Dr. Ease's eyes was familiar in a way Ada couldn't explain. Did something like this happen to you? Ada asked. My mother's story, not mine. Dr. Ease straightened. But I've spent 20 years making sure other people's daughters get the chance she didn't. Ada pressed her lips together. She was not the kind of woman who cried in front of strangers anymore. But she was close. Thank your daughter, Dr. Ease said. She did the work.
Rose chose law.
Because of one afternoon at 14, she had gone with Ada to a legal aid office because their landlord was threatening to evict them illegally, and she had watched a young female lawyer dismantle the landlord's entire argument in 20 minutes flat. So cleanly, so precisely, that by the end the man was the one who looked afraid. Rose had walked out of that office and said, I want to do that. Ada thought she meant the sharp suit. She found out later it was the power, not power over people, but power to stand between someone helpless and something that wanted to hurt them. At 18, Rose packed a small bag and moved into the university hostel. The night before she left, they sat on the floor of their room and ate chin-chin from a plastic container and said very little. They had already said most things to each other across the years. The silence between them was comfortable and full. Are you scared? Ada asked.
Rose thought about it. No.
A little. Good, Ada said. A little scared, means you know it matters. Rose was 22, in her 4th year, when the call came. She was in the law library, deep in a case file, when her phone buzzed. Unfamiliar number. Lagos code. Something made her pick up. Hello, is this Rose? A man's voice. Cautious.
Yes.
Who is this? A pause long enough to make her stomach tighten. This is Emeka, Peter's younger brother. Your father's brother. Rose sat very still. Your father is sick, Emeka said. He has been asking to see you. Rose looked at the case file on the table. Her eyes moved across the words, but she wasn't reading. Does he know how to reach me? She asked quietly. He knew where to find your mother for years. He just never. Never what? Silence. Never tried. Rose finished for him. I'm sorry, Emeka said. I know this is a lot. Thank you for calling, she said evenly. I'll think about it. She hung up. She sat in the library for 45 minutes without moving. Students came and went. Chairs scraped. Someone dropped a book, and the sound hit the floor like a gunshot. Rose did not flinch. She was thinking about her mother, about a 9-year-old girl eating spaghetti and saying okay, about a woman turning her back to the rain so her baby would stay dry. She called Ada.
Mama.
Peter's brother called me. He said Peter is sick and wants to see me. The line went very quiet. What do I do? Rose asked. Ada took a long breath. That is your decision, my daughter. Not mine. But what do you think? I think you should do whatever will let you sleep at night. Not what will hurt him. Not what will impress anyone. What will let you sleep. What would let you sleep, if it was you? I already sleep fine, Ada said simply. I've been sleeping fine for years. Rose smiled despite herself. Go if you want to go, Ada continued. Don't go if you don't want to. But whatever you do, Rose, do it for yourself. Not for him.
Not even for me.
She went. She drove to Lagos the following Friday. Borrowed a friend's car. Wore jeans, a white blouse, flat shoes. She did not dress to impress. She did not dress to punish. She just dressed. The house was in Surulere. Modest. The paint fading on one wall. A small garden out front that had gone slightly wild. Emeka met her at the gate. Kind eyes. The look of a man who had been carrying guilt for a long time. Thank you for coming, he said. Don't thank me yet, Rose replied. He let her inside. Peter was in a hospital bed set up in the main bedroom. Thinner than she expected. Thinner than the photos she had found online over the years, just twice, just to see who he was. He had remarried Grace. Had a son named Zika who lived abroad. Had retired early. Now he lay in that bed surrounded by medication and afternoon light. He saw her come in, and something happened to his face that Rose had not prepared herself for. He looked ashamed. Not sick person ashamed. Deeply, quietly, genuinely ashamed. The kind that had been sitting in someone's chest for 20 years and had finally found the face it belonged to. Rose stood at the foot of the bed. She did not sit. She was not ready to sit.
Rose, he said.
Voice rough but soft. She said nothing. You look like your mother, he said. I know, she said. She's a good person. He closed his eyes briefly. She is. The room was very quiet. Outside, a distant voice was calling prices on the street. Life going on. I don't know what you want me to say, Rose said. Her voice was even. Not cold. Not warm. Even. I don't want you to say anything, he replied. I just wanted to see you.
He paused.
I watched you. From a distance. The essay competition. The scholarship. I heard you're studying law.
4th year, she said.
Your mother. Don't, Rose said quietly. He stopped. I don't hate you, Rose said. The words came out measured. Each one weighed. I thought I would. For a long time I thought I would feel something enormous here, rage or pain. But I'm standing in front of you, and I just feel tired. I feel tired of this taking up space in my life. Peter looked at her. I didn't come to forgive you for your sake, she continued. I came because my mother told me to do what would let me sleep. And carrying hatred is heavier than your worth. She said it without cruelty, just as a fact. So, I'm choosing to put it down. His jaw worked. His eyes were bright. I also came to tell you one thing, Rose said. She reached into her bag and placed a folded document on the foot of the bed. That's my acceptance letter to the bar. I passed the bar exam last month. I graduate in December. She looked at him directly. The girl you put outside, the one you decided had no value because she wasn't a boy, she's a lawyer now. Peter's hands tightened on the sheets. My mother raised me with nothing, Rose said. No house. No money. No name from you. And she raised me better than any house could have. She picked up her bag. I hope you get better. But I need you to know what you threw away. She walked to the door. Then she stopped. She turned back once. Peter was still looking at her, and now the tears were there, open and real. You have a grandchild, Rose said quietly. Something shifted in the room. I'm not pregnant, she added, watching his confusion. I mean the children I'll have one day. When I'm ready. When I've built the kind of home that deserves them. Her voice softened just slightly, just at the edge. Those children will know their grandmother. They will know her name, her story, every sacrifice she made. A pause. But they will not know yours. She walked out. She sat in the car outside for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't feel victorious. She felt something quieter than both, like a door that had been rattling in the wind for years had finally been closed properly. She called Ada. He looked at me like I was the most important thing he had ever seen, Rose said. And I realized that was too late to matter. Ada was quiet. I told him about the bar exam, Rose said. Ada made a sound that could have been a laugh or a sob, impossible to tell. You passed already? You told me results were next month. I lied, Rose said. I wanted to be sure before I told you. Rose.
Mama.
We did it. Everything you carried, so I wouldn't have to, it worked. Ada said nothing for a long moment. Come home this weekend, she finally said. I will. I'll make jollof rice. Rose smiled. Make extra. She started the car and pulled out into the thick Lagos traffic. Horns. Voices. The smell of exhaust and palm oil from a roadside kitchen. The city that had once swallowed her mother whole. She thought of Ada at 22, walking out of a door with a 3-day-old baby and one bag. She thought of herself now, 22, with a degree coming and a calling and a name. She was building brick by brick. She thought of all the women who didn't get to walk out that door, all the daughters still sleeping under trees, and she made a second promise, quietly, to no one in particular. The same kind of silent, unbreakable promise her mother had made years ago on a mattress on a parlor floor. She was going to become a lawyer who stood between the helpless and the thing that wanted to hurt them. But more than that, she was going to find those women. The ones still inside houses that didn't belong to them. The ones who didn't know they could leave. She was going to hand them the key. Peter died 8 months later. Rose did not go to the funeral. Zika, the son Peter had borrowed money and pride and years of his life to build his entire identity around, was still abroad. He sent a wreath. He did not come home. That same week, Rose stood in a Lagos Island courtroom for the first time as a qualified lawyer. 23 years old. Black suit. Flat shoes. Hair back. Voice clear. The case: a woman trying to reclaim unpaid wages from an employer who had dismissed her without notice. She was 40 years old, soft-spoken, with the careful eyes of someone who had learned not to expect much. Rose looked at her and saw something old and familiar in her posture. The folded hands. The way she looked at the floor when the opposing lawyer raised his voice. The law was clear. Rose was prepared. When it was time to speak, she stood up. And she spoke. She won. The woman cried in the corridor afterward, quietly, both hands over her mouth. Then she looked at Rose. I didn't think anyone would help me.
Someone always will, Rose said.
You just have to find them. Outside, she stood on the courthouse steps in the bright Lagos sun and checked her phone. A message from Ada. How did it go? She typed back. We won, Mama. First case. 3 seconds later. Folded hands, folded hands, folded hands, my daughter. Rose laughed out loud on the courthouse steps and did not care who heard her. Years later, when people told her story, and they did tell it in interviews, magazines, panels, they always started with the big moments. The scholarship,
the bar exam,
the courtroom victories. But Rose always corrected them. The story doesn't start with me, she would say. Then where does it start? Every time, without hesitation, it starts with a woman who had nothing but her child and her spine, who was thrown out at her most broken moment and built a shelter from fallen sticks and sheer will, who went hungry so her daughter didn't have to, who never, not once, told her daughter to be smaller so the world would be more comfortable. She would pause. It starts with Ada. Everything starts with Ada. And somewhere across Lagos, in a room that was finally fully hers, a proper apartment, windows that didn't leak, a small garden Funk had helped her plant, Ada sat in her chair by the window in the evening light, drinking tea, wearing the dress Rose had bought her for her 53rd birthday. She did not know she was being talked about. She did not need to know. She had already won. Long before the courtrooms, long before the cameras, long before the world ever learned Rose's name. She had won the night she walked out of that door. The night she looked at her 3-day-old daughter and said, "Her name is Rose," and chose to plant her.